Welcome to Not Just Money with your hosts, Doretta and Lee. This isn't your typical podcast about finances. It's a podcast about all the money conversations we aren't having, sometimes not even with ourselves. Join us on this journey of hard truths, lived experience, and the wisdom that comes from both. Because money is never just about money.
Welcome to Not Just Money with Doretta and Lee. I'm Doretta.
I'm Lee.
And today we're going to explore what for some people is the biggest, scariest hurdle to financial responsibility, the humble budget.
And we mean humble because budgeting doesn't have to be hard or complicated or time-consuming. It doesn't require spreadsheets unless you happen to love them. And this is a true story. Doretta and I definitely know people who count Excel as their BFFs. But it just requires honesty and enough control to keep you on track.
A lot of people think budgets are inflexible or even tyrannical, but really nothing can be further from the truth. Budgets are not for limiting your lifestyle. Your budget is the single most powerful tool you have to focus your money on the things that are most important to you.
That's so true. Your budget is your plan to living your best life. And not only is it not stressful, it's an incredibly powerful stress buster. Last week we talked about savings and the one reason people struggle to save. This week on budgets is all about how to chart that journey. Now, research shows that the first step is to think about these things in relation to your own situation. Then, when it's time to put it together or get some professional advice, you're more likely to take action. So, let's get started.
When I first started speaking on personal finance, I'd watch people in the audience tighten up as soon as I said the word budget.
Oh my God, like a collective shiver goes through the room?
And I got to the point where I would actually avoid using the word by encouraging people to think about budgeting as their personal plan for living well within their means. But I don't know now. I'm thinking more and more about just owning the word. Budgets are good. Own your budget.
I mean, Doretta, you know me. I'm all about owning your narrative, and that means fessing up to your budget or non-existent budget.
Exactly. So let's start by talking a little bit about what exactly is a budget. And I think about it as a personal, or for many people, a family plan that keeps you on track to live within your means and to save for the important things and to spend your disposable income. And that is a concept we really want you to hang on to, disposable income, on the things that mean the most to you.
Now, sometimes I really like to get Disney on this, and it's because I always say that financial literacy is about making your dreams come true. And a budget to me is your roadmap. So it's turning what is a fantasy without a plan to an achievable goal.
And this is where you tell me your favorite quote from Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, you probably will hear me repeat this often. So there's that moment where Alice meets the Cheshire Cat and she's asking for directions, and the cat answers, well, depends where you want to go. And Alice doesn't know where she wants to go. She's like, well, anywhere will do. And the cat responds, well, then any road will take you there. And I don't know, when I was a child and reading this, I was like, mind explosion. Like, oh my God, it's so true. Like, if I don't know where I'm going, any road will take me there.
Yep. I think that's so funny. Honestly, the number of times Lee will talk about the Cheshire Cat. The Alice and the Cheshire Cat is kind of Lee's version of my big rocks in the jar. It's like I hang on to make sure you get your big rocks in the jar first, and Lee hangs on to that roadmap. We actually think it matters a lot where you go, where you want to be, wherever that is. The truth is that we live in a society that you are going to need money to get there. And your budget's how you manage your money. And not just how to manage your money, but also enjoy the journey. And that is really important.
Yeah, remember we talked last week about the benefits, especially the psychological benefits of saving, like reducing stress, empowering your future, all of that. Well, I mean, budgeting is how you get there. And this is backed by tons of research, most of it through thoughtful surveys from financial regulatory bodies, financial institutions, financial literacy academics, and the folks who develop and sell budgeting apps.
As Lee said, we talked a lot about the benefits of saving and how saving is really the superpower that is going to help you get to your goals and live your best life. Well, budgeting's the practical side of that.
Yep.
It's how you make it happen. So let's start with stress reduction. For example, the thing is, developing a budget is absolutely proven to reduce stress around money. And we know that stress levels around money are incredibly high right now. FP Canada, and that's the financial planning folks, they maintain something called the Financial Stress Index. And according to the most recent one, almost half of Canadians say they've lost sleep because of financial worries, and 1 in 3 say they're short of money at the end of the month. Budgeting can alleviate that stress. I've seen surveys where users of budget apps report an over 90% reduction in stress. And I've even interviewed a lot of credit counselors and bankruptcy trustees. And these are the folks who are really trying to help the people who are really struggling the most with debt. And every single one of them has told me that their clients say to them, I wish I'd come to you sooner. I wish I'd started this sooner. I feel like this huge weight has come off my shoulders.
So sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's look at it practically. When you budget, you know you will have enough to pay your bills. That helps you to pay them on time and cut out expensive late fees or non sufficient funds. Like those really make a difference at the end of the month.
Absolutely. And when we talk about paying bills, if you're struggling with debt, budgeting is how you pay off that debt faster and stay out of debt in the future. So we'll be doing a much deeper dive on debt in a future episode, but hold that thought in your head.
Another thing budgeting can do is help you save more and feel good about saving because you will now be saving with purpose and you will feel pride in that sense of accomplishment.
You really will. And when you do spend, you'll enjoy it more because you've budgeted for it and it'll be aligned to your goals and what truly brings you joy. And I will tell you, for me, this is a huge one because I have a lot of stress around spending money and saving is kind of like my almost unhealthy safe space. So knowing that I've saved and prepared for something gives me permission to spend it and enjoy it.
Yeah, especially in your retired years, right? You hear all these stories where people spend the majority of their lives saving, and then all of a sudden you turn that switch and it's like, oh, well, now I have to spend this money? But budgeting is that really practical tool that will help you secure your future, whether you're trying to save more for your retirement or whether you're trying to spend to really enjoy all the fruits of your labor. And so they can be both short and long term. Like, remember Alice and the Cheshire Cat, knowing where you're going matters, and budgeting is your map to get there.
Another benefit of budgeting is that it actually makes it easier for you to talk about money. And this is especially true for couples who are jointly navigating their financial future. Money is really hard to talk about. Seriously, I have had a priest tell me that people will talk to him about their sex lives before they will talk about their money problems. I got nothing. But
Wouldn't they
budgeting will really help you do that.
wouldn't they be talking to him about religious issues?
Oh, no, your spiritual advisor can help you in all areas of your life.
I like how sexual things came up first.
It's
Dot,
very
dot,
strange.
dot.
But anyway, what I was saying is that it's being able to talk about money more easily is important, especially for couples. And it also will make it much easier for you to resist external pressures to spend. Those things where you just don't know how to say no. So you end up spending money you don't want to spend because you didn't know how to extricate yourself from a commitment. So you will actually find yourself standing up for yourself and standing up for your financial goals.
Yeah, I mean, peer pressure, be real. right? And I think we can even go deeper
Absolutely.
than that because budgeting actually changes the way you think about money. Now, whether you talk about it or not, it's about having more control, more purpose, and never doubt how having a cushion in the bank gives you this huge sense of safety.
Absolutely. There are a bunch of other benefits to budgeting that researchers have pointed out, but they're a little bit more nebulous, a little harder to quantify, but they do make a big difference in how you live your life. There are things like just improved sleep, less conflict in relationships. We know that, for example, divorce rates are high and finances figure in well over half divorces. So being on the same page, understanding your roadmap, as Alice needs to understand her roadmap, is really going to have those kinds of long term benefits.
So, in a nutshell, own your budget, own the word, be proud because you know that budgeting is going to give you control over things that are actually possible for you to control. And it will set you up for all sorts of wonderful surprises in the future.
Right. All the benefits of budgeting. So, what's not to love?
Okay, all right. So I think we've really espoused all the benefits of budgeting here and how much we love budgeting. So now let's kind of change courses and talk a little bit about the how to. There's a lot of people who struggle with that particular question, but there's a couple of things that I think are important to highlight that there is no one size fits all. Budgets are really useful to create when you go through a big life change. These moments tend to create financial changes, good and bad. So, making sure you do a budget during these periods is super helpful. Now, I remember when I created my first budget. Oh, God. I don't know if I've ever told Doretta the story. So, here goes. Um, I was on my own when I went off to university. My parents had left the country, and so did my older brother. So I was here totally on my own. And I rented my own place and had to be really counting my pennies between tuition and living expenses. And I had student loans, obviously, and I was also working, but that was all the income I had. My every expense was tracked. I kept every receipt. I reconciled my accounts between my credit card and my debit card transactions. Not a cent went unaccounted for. Now, that was a really tough period. And I have to admit, probably prepared me for the budgets that I make for myself today. But that was a really difficult time because, as I shared previous, not having enough money to cover my expenses was such a huge stressor for me. And I feel like this was just like the continuity of that particular trauma. But Doretta, when did you start budgeting?
Honestly, was it was way more organic for me. I'm one of those people that always felt the need to know exactly how much money I had and how much money I needed. So I actually started saving first my allowance and then almost all the money I made from the time I started babysitting when I was about 12 or 13, and then from weekend and summer jobs. And at that point, I was living with my parents, and I didn't budget as much as I just did not spend money. But like you, when I went off to university and I was only 17, and that's when I started having to manage money on my own. I never had access to a bank of mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
So my first budgets were very, very basic. And unlike you, I did not go into the sort of every detail I spent. I just spent the absolute bare minimum I could at any given time. I had to make sure that I had enough to live on after I paid tuition and books. I had student loans, summer jobs,
Mm-hmm.
scholarships, and I got married really, really young, like when I was still a teenager. And then there were two of us, both in exactly the same position. So this did not make it any easier. But fortunately, our goals and our approach to money were always really aligned. So for us, we didn't sort of over budget to start with, or for me, I didn't over budget to start with. I always just kind of like it got a little bit more complicated. Um, as as the situation got more complicated.
Yeah, I totally now looking back feel like I overdid that and it wasn't necessary, but it was, again, that piece of trauma that carried with me that I just wasn't sure I had enough. Not that I was spending a lot, but if I wanted to have lunch with a classmate. Could I afford that? Could I not afford that? But I think had I listened to this podcast then, I probably would have been like, okay, I can be a little bit looser on this, that it didn't have to be literally down to the last penny. But budgeting as a couple, I feel like that's many conversations that need to occur. There's so many things that go into that. And I think how you budget with your husband versus how I budget with mine is probably in opposite sides of the spectrum. So look forward to that conversation.
Well, I think we'll do a much deeper dive on that one another. I know it's crazy problematic for some people. Fortunately, not for us. Yeah. So for me, I got more formal after I got my first really good job, which was a couple of years after I graduated. I took a course, and you'll hear me refer to this course probably a
My
number of
favorite.
times. It's called, yeah, Nancy Thompson's Investing for Women. But it was a really, really smart thing because her key message was that investing for women is more or less the same as investing for men. But if there are men in the room, women don't speak up and they don't ask the questions that they need to ask. So she was all about creating a really safe space. And remember, this was decades ago. So it was really very, very forward thinking at that time, quite revolutionary at that time. But what it really taught me about was the difference between good and bad debt, about being able to invest in yourself, and about resisting consumer debt like the plague. And that's when I really started to have a pay yourself first savings plan, for example.
Yeah, that's amazing that A, that was offered, and B, you were like, this is the class for me. So what I find really interesting about that is that the research today still says the same thing.
Yeah.
So let's dig in and explore how to actually go about creating your first maybe budget or refine your current budget. First thoughts, Doretta.
I think the best place to start is getting on top of your current financial position. How much money comes in? How much money goes out? Where does it go? It surprises me sometimes just how many people don't actually know what their day-to-day financial landscape looks like. There's some wishful thinking goes on. There's a lot of fear that goes on. People are afraid to look under those financial rocks. But I think that that's where you should start, by lifting up those little rocks and look at what's squirming around under there.
Agreed. What's important to note is that budgeting is a skill. It's something you should definitely do properly as you start and learning how to. But you can be more detailed or relaxed with how you budget over time. I went from military level execution to today where I set my limits on my discretionary spending only, and it's loose. I do check my financial accounts weekly to stay on track, but some months I might be a little over, some months I might not spend anything at all. But overall, I'm where I want to be. Now, you can use a pencil and paper, an Excel spreadsheet, or an app. Whatever's convenient, whatever works for you. And you can find a bunch of apps online, free and for purchase or by subscription. We'll stick some links to free resources in the podcast notes. And shout out to our friends at the Ontario Securities Commission and the free unbiased resource on their Get Smarter with Money website. Lots of really great tools there. And it's got a nice little budget calculator and a budget worksheet to help you get started.
So where to start? Start with money in. List your monthly income from all sources. Your net income from work. Your net income is what actually goes into your bank account. Sorry, my voice just went. I'm drinking beer. Can you believe that?
Is that what that is?
It's a Radler. It's beer with grapefruit juice.
Okay, because I totally thought you were drinking like an iced tea, and I'm like, man, I want an iced tea, but that's hilarious. I'm proud of you.
Okay, sorry. So first, list your monthly income from all sources. Your net income from work. And net income is what actually goes into your bank account after all the deduction. Any side hustles you've got, investment income, child support, government benefits, whatever you know comes in every month. For self-employment and gig income, just give it your best estimate.
And once you've done that, list your monthly expenses, housing and related costs like a rent or mortgage, insurance and utilities, food, transportation, entertainment, subscriptions, gifts, charity, student loans, any other regular expenses you have. You may want to access your bank account or your credit card statements to check a few figures. Your net pay and fixed expenses, for example. For the rest, allocate what you think is a reasonable amount to each category. You may have some income and expenses that come in or go out annually or biannually, like scholarships, bonuses, taxes, insurance, and memberships and subscriptions. Now, even if you pay them annually, for now, just divide the annual amount by 12 and add it in.
Right. So now that you've best guessed money in and money out, subtract expenses from income. If there's more coming in than going out, you're looking at a surplus.
Woohoo! And based on a lot of years of experience, I'm guessing that the results will show you something of a surplus on paper, but that for many of you, there never seems to be that much left over by the end of the month.
Right. But that's the value of a budget. It gives you a clear idea of what you should be spending by your own priorities, and it allows you to adjust so that you can meet your goals. So let's take a closer look.
Start by prioritizing your expenses, needs versus wants. Remember, we talked about that last week. Start with your necessary expenses housing, food, transportation, things that you have to spend every month. Now, you might have additional spends like insurance, daycare costs, student loans, or other debt repayments, for examples, that you can't just take off the budget.
Yeah. And you might have other needs that are unique to your situation as well. I'll give you an example. Most people would consider a cleaning lady to be firmly in want territory. But for me, it's a need because I've had a lot of surgery on my back and there's stuff that I just can't do. So I've given up things from the time I was really quite young. Like if I had to choose between being able to eat out for dinner or lunch or whatever it was versus a cleaning lady stays on the needs list.
I have a similar story. A few years ago, I was running a pilot presentation with a grade 4 class on needs and wants. Now, one of the discussions was describing what a need and a want was. One student asks, "What about my dog?" And I paused. Now, for me, a dog was definitely on my wants list. So is a cleaning lady. But for this child, it was a need. The dog was part of their family. And it created actually a wonderful dialogue and really challenged my own thinking.
It's a really important learning. Every person's needs are unique. So remember the lesson of the big rock, right? What are your big rocks in your jar? I mean, for that child, the pet was part of the family in that big rock. And in my jar, the cleaning lady is a big rock. So remember, you got to get your big rocks into the jar first, or the small stuff just fills it up and leaves no room for what's important to you.
That's so true. Now, once you've got all your mandatory expenses allocated, it's time to look at your dun 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 dun, discretionary spending. That's the money you don't have to spend in a particular way. This tends to be the leakiest part of your spending, and probably why, after your initial budget, you should have more money left over every month than you do. This is the money that is completely in your control, the money you have every month to focus on your goals. Remember last week's, both on spending on the things that bring you joy and saving for your future joy and security. And so take a look at this discretionary spending and compare the amounts you've allocated with your joys and goals. You may want to do some tweaking.
So, what's in your discretionary spending? Because remember, discretionary spending, just like wants and needs, vary from person to person.
Yeah.
Come on, confess.
Okay. So I have a personal trainer because I cheat at working out and it's expensive. And I think health is really important, but to me, this is honestly a more want. I know health is a need, but I am fully capable of doing workouts by myself. But I don't. So for me, this is, definitely a big part of my discretionary spending. I also have a fitness app that gives me access to all the workout classes around me that expires each month. So it forces me to use them because we know my loss aversion is serious. And that really kind of keeps me on track. Beyond that, I spend quite a bit on my young daughter. I'm that parent that is making up for my lost childhood in many ways. Now, my minimalist husband is the stingiest person I know in this manner. So I text him before I make the purchase, like we talked about last week, to keep me honest and to be like, does she need more dresses? Um, but then there are, of course, classes and camps for her. Good God, they're so expensive. And again, we can split hairs and say need or want in those cases because obviously she needs to go somewhere if I'm working or if we're both working. There are also memberships to museums. Although with her in school, we have really reduced that down to about one. We used to have about three different memberships to galleries and museums. Eating out for us isn't very excessive. If we are having a family outing, we will eat out or maybe for a special occasion because cooking and packing lunches has just been part of me growing up. And so doing it now doesn't bother me. And it helps that both my husband and my daughter are okay eating the same lunch every day. It's really bizarre. Oh, of course, charity. I try to make fewer but larger donations to places that I really care about. Um, and that doesn't mean we don't spend money in other areas. Like, for example, tech and tech related are my husband's domain. And, he pays for the one streaming subscription unless it's football season, then we have two. What about you, Doretta?
The joys the joys of couple planning, right? Yeah. Um, about me, I guess, I mean, I'm at obviously a very different life stage than you, and I don't have a lot of budgetary needs for buying stuff. I buy virtually no sort of stuff except, I guess, gifts, especially for my grandchildren. Travel's the big one for us, and subscriptions for opera, ballet, and theater, because those are my kind of passions. Interesting, though, I kind of fell in love with opera at a point where I was fairly young, but I really couldn't afford it. And so I deliberately and consciously decided opera was something I was going to enjoy by the time I turned 40 and stuck to that because you can't do everything all at once, right? My husband and I are both news junkies, so we have news subscriptions, though we've pretty much figured out how we're always on a new member deal. We kind of move them around and switch between us. Art galleries and museums like you, we canceled cable and limited ourselves to two streaming services and only do them again on new membership things for a few months at a time and then switch them up. Restaurants, although we don't like you, we really don't eat out that much. We live downtown in a big city. We both really like to cook. And and so we do. We have the time to do it and we enjoy doing it. Yeah. And then in terms of as we all know, my famous cafe time, I take a fixed amount of cash out every week for that. And if I blow through that by the middle of the week, I wanted to say I wait till next week. Actually, I just go and get some more money, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's what we call leaky budget. But I was just about
Leaky
I would
budget.
totally call you out on that because if you said, "Oh, I blew that money during the week, I wouldn't spend." I'd be like, "That's false," because I have seen you go, "Oh, I need more money for coffee."
Yeah. But I will say, like during COVID, for example, when I couldn't go to my cafes regularly, I moved all my whole cafe budget to a food bank because I live downtown and I could really see the impact. So I didn't save that money. I actually sent all that money. I just added it to my charitable donations.
Oh, that's nice. I didn't know that. Yeah, so
Hmm.
I mean, I guess the point here we're trying to make is that everyone's discretionary spending should reflect what's important to them, right? And you look at the way I spend and Doretta spends, it's very different, and they're totally aligned to the priorities that we set, and we focus on what's most important to us. Now, it's important to note that we're also at very different stages of our lives, and so our spending patterns will change. That doesn't mean that when Doretta was my age, she probably had different objectives. And as I get older and my situations and interests change, my spending will also mirror that. So, what's really important is to figure out how you're going to achieve your goals and what brings you the most joy. And maybe if you're younger and opera's on that list, do what Dretta did and say, by 40, I'm going to afford to go to the opera. And what a wonderful goal that is.
So let's get back to the budget that you're making for yourself, the first budget that you're actually going to stick to. Now you've listed your income and your expenses, and you've decided what is a reasonable amount to spend in your discretionary categories. You've actually done it. You've created a preliminary budget.
Woohoo!
To be honest, right now, this preliminary budget is probably a bit abstract. That's okay. Your income is probably pretty accurate unless you have a serious gig situation. But if you don't budget regularly, we're guessing that your expenses are pretty approximate and a combination of wishful thinking and, well, forgetfulness about things you spend money without thinking about. And that's okay. We all do it. It's okay for now. It's not okay indefinitely.
And that's why we're going to suggest a few things to help you refine your budget and up your responsibility game.
And don't worry, we are not going to give you rules because honestly, there are no rules that work for everyone. We're not going to tell you you can't have your cafes or your avocado toast. What we're going to do is give you some suggestions that will make it easier for you starting right now.
Now, the first thing is to start a spending diary. I know
Yay, a diary. We're going to be 13-year-old kids.
No, but I mean, I know we've all done it for food, right? Like to do a food journal. But that's the best way to figure out where your leakiness is happening or to actually understand where your money is truly going. So for the next month, track every penny you actually spend and how it actually makes you feel in the moment and after.
And that how it makes you feel part is really, really important. We want to help you get at the incidental spending that doesn't bring you joy. It doesn't contribute to your goals. It doesn't align with your values. In other words, we're going to dig out the stuff that's siphoning your money away that doesn't have to. And you can get that money back and refocus it.
Yeah, and I know it sounds really tedious and possibly very hard, but it doesn't have to be. It can be fun. You can keep it as simple as possible. A running note on your phone works just fine. Now, as Doretta said, what you really want to get at is that discretionary spending. When you write down what you think your monthly expenses are, there's almost always a surplus, which somehow never happens in real life. So, keeping a spending diary will give you insights into where that money actually goes. And fun fact, when you keep a spending diary, you actually make better spending decisions. It's like when you're tracking your food and you're like, oh man, I really don't want to write that I ate an entire bag of chips, so I'm not going to do it. Same thing happens with spending.
Absolutely. So when you've done that, you're going to actually be able to take what you've learned from your actual real life spending and use those learnings to fine tune your budget. And guaranteed, it's going to help you cut back on the kind of habitual, incidental spending that really doesn't enhance your life, but it still fritters away your possibilities. Because remember, the goal here is to create a budget you can stick to that you actually use to make sure you have the money to spend on the little things that bring you joy and that you can build short, medium, and long-term savings that align with your goals and values and bring you security and calm.
The next thing we suggest especially if you've never tried or been successful at budgeting before, is to control your discretionary spending by putting a monthly limit on your credit card or debit expense. In terms of budgeting, decide on a reasonable discretionary amount and focus on staying within it.
I think that's a really great idea. You can talk to your financial institutions about the best way to do that if you actually want to put a hard limit on it. But I would say be prepared in that sense. They may try to actually sell you an additional service like an overdraft protection or encourage you to keep the highest possible levels on your credit cards,
Boo, boo.
your debt withdrawal. Boo, boo is right. Remember, financial institutions are in the business of selling you services. That does not mean you have to buy them. Resist, resist, resist.
I think we're going to have to do a whole chat around how financial services don't always act in your best interests. Now,
Yep.
our third suggestion is a follow up from last week. Make sure you include saving in your budget. Some of you might be wondering how much you should be allocating to saving every month. Now, there are several different formulae you may have heard of, so I'll give them a mention. Okay, probably the most common one is the 50-30-20 rule, which suggests you allocate 50% of your pre-tax income for needs. Okay, so those are your hard expenses, 30% for wants, and 20% for savings.
Yeah, I think the truth is a lot more diverse and circumstance dependent than those kinds of rules of thumb suggest. Some people live paycheck to paycheck, and they have to be very intentional to begin even a modest savings plan. And then there are some people who live way, 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 way below their means and save 50% of their income or even more. Some couples save for a down payment or develop their saving and investing strategy by living on one income. It just really depends, very circumstance dependent.
Yeah, and also we have to talk about age and life stage. And we mentioned this earlier. When you have young kids and a mortgage, you just have less disposable income. Don't beat yourself up about it. When you know where your money is going, when your expenses ease or your income increases, you'll know you can level up your savings then. But it is important to keep in mind, though, the earlier you start saving, the better. The magic of compounding is very hard to beat, but it requires time.
Absolutely. And here at Not Just Money, we are very much of the just start now school. Start as small as you need to, but start now and stay at it. Remember what we said. Forming the saving habit is incredibly important. It's a muscle you want to flex by its very definition. It requires you to live beneath your means, leaving yourself some space. And that is an unbelievably powerful goal affirming habit.
So there you have it. 3 ideas to supercharge your budget right now. Spending diary. Cap your discretionary spending. Include savings in your budget, no matter how small an amount.
So, Lee, 3 key learnings for today.
First, and you're going to laugh, know where you are and where you're going. Your budget is the
Yes, Alice.
Your budget is the map to help you get there. Be honest, be brave, be prepared.
Second, keep it simple. Your budget only needs to be as detailed as you need it to be to know where you stand and keep yourself on track. There are lots of budget tools online. We've listed a few of them in the notes.
Now, finally, Alice is one of my monikers, so is this one. Keep it fun. Life is to be lived. Make room in your budget for the small joys like coffee that makes you truly happy. Austerity is generally unsustainable, and the backlash, can we say retail therapy, can be brutal.
That's it for today.
Good talk.
You've been listening to Not Just Money with Doretta and Lee. Click on the show's description for links to resources related to today's conversation. Our aim is to share sources that provide objective information that can help you make informed financial decisions. Please rate and review our show. If you'd like to get in touch with us, email us at notjustmoneypodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to be featured on the show, you can send us your questions and comments by a written email, audio file, or video file. Please include your name and city. This show is produced and edited by Lee, with original music by Leo Zhang cello and artwork by John Tu. Now for some legalese. Please note that the views expressed by our hosts and guests are theirs alone and should not be viewed as financial advice. This podcast is intended to be entertainment and educational in nature. Please seek additional professional support or information before acting on any podcast information. As always, good talk.